Hi, I'm John Stevenson. We're going to be looking at Elijah's Ascension, 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 18. 2 Kings 2:1 begins, "And it came about when the Lord was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind to heaven," and notice we've already gotten the spoiler. We're already told how it's going to turn out. That Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal, and what we're going to see is a series of travels. They go from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha says, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." And so they went down to Bethel. Notice they're going from Gilgal to Bethel. That's not going to be their end of the travels. Also, uh, I hear that voice, "Stay here, I'm going to this location." And Elisha says, "No, I'm staying with you." It reminds us of the earlier story of Ruth and Naomi, where Naomi said, "No, go back to your people. I have a journey to take." And Ruth had said, "No, I'm going to be with you. Your God will be my God. There's nothing that's going to separate us." And Elisha shows that same commitment to Elijah. Verse 3, "Then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, 'Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?' And he said, 'Yes, I know. Be still.'" So even though we've been given a spoiler, notice Elisha has also been given the same sort of spoiler, a prophetic spoiler in their case. We're looking at it through the eyes of history. Verse 4, "Elijah said to him, 'Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho.'" So notice he's making a circuit of the various places that he would travel in his ministry. He's wrapping those up. But Elisha says, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. Verse 5, "The sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, 'Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?' And he answered, 'Yes, I know. Be still.'" Notice there's a repetition that's taking place. They go, the prophets come out, they ask, "Do you know?" He says, "Yes, I know. Be still." Verse 6, "Then Elijah said to him, 'Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan.'" So he's gone Gilgal, Bethel, Jericho, and Jordan. And in a sense, he's not just retracing his steps of places where he's ministered, but he's also going on a journey that retraces some of the steps that Israel had taken when they first came into the land. But he's doing it in sort of a reverse order. He's going back to the Jordan where the Israelites had crossed the Jordan River upon first coming into the promised land. And Elisha responds, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." And so the two of them went on. Verse 7, "Now 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Elijah took his mantle and folded it together and struck the waters, and they were divided here and there." Now that's a little bit different from the way that the Israelites had crossed over. When they had crossed over, remember, they had taken the Ark of the Covenant, and we're going to see the Ark of the Covenant in just a minute. They had taken the Ark of the Covenant and stepped into the waters, and the waters had stopped upstream, not right there, but far upstream. And of course, if waters are flowing and waters stop, then whatever is flowing just flows away. But here, he struck the waters, and they were divided here and there. I'm not sure what that looked like, but the two of them crossed over on dry ground. So in a sense, they're repeating not just the travels, but even the miracle. Verse 9, and when they had crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I'm taken from you." So Elijah knows he's going to be taken. And Elisha said, "Please let a double portion of your spirit be upon me." Now, when you speak of a double portion of something, that's the portion that normally the firstborn would get. The firstborn would be given the double portion so that he could use that. Now, it wasn't just so he could have a whole lot of money, but so that he could use that to be the new leader of the family and take care of the needs of the family. And Elisha is asking that from Elijah. Let me be your spiritual heir. He's not concerned about physical possessions, physical bank account, but rather let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. Verse 10, he said, and by the way, there's a heritage of the spiritual mentor, but even there, Elisha says, you've asked a hard thing. You see, that doesn't come automatically. Nevertheless, he continues, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, then it shall not be so. You see, Elijah is not able to give that spiritual heritage. That has to come from God. You see, I can raise up a disciple, I can train up a leader, but as far as the spiritual ramifications of that spiritual giftedness needs to come from God. I can't pass that on my own. Only God gives that. Verse 11, as they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. Now, when we read about that chariot of fire, we haven't read about such a thing in the books of 1st or 2nd Kings. But when we come to Chronicles, there's an interesting reference to a chariot that might be connected here. You see, when they were building the temple, 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 18, speaks about the altar of incense, refined gold by weight, and gold for here it is, the model of the chariot. And then he explains, even the cherubim that spread out their wings and covered the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Notice how the ark of the covenant was described in terms of a chariot. And this isn't the ark of the covenant that was down there in Jerusalem. What you have here is that which the ark of the covenant represented. The very presence of God comes and takes Elijah into heaven. Verse 12, Elisha saw it. Remember the promise. If you see it, Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw Elijah no more. And then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them into two pieces. Out of mourning, out of maybe a sense of repentance. He's just seen something incredible that he never expected to see. He saw the moving hand of God. He saw the transition of Elijah from being here on earth to living in heaven. Verse 14, he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him. And he goes back and he struck the waters and said, where is the Lord, the God of Elijah? You see, God had shown up. His presence had been manifested. But then he took Elijah and went into heaven. And now Elisha asked the question, has God left? Is he still here? Where is the Lord? And when he also had struck the waters, they were divided here and there. And Elisha crossed over. Even though God's presence had come and gone, God is still there. Verse 15, now when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho opposite him saw him, and I don't know that they'd seen this thing with the waters. They hadn't seen Elijah caught up into heaven. But they looked at him, and they could tell there was something about him. The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha. That is, the prophetic mantle had been passed, and they came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. Now, when we speak about the spirit of Elijah now resting upon the next prophet, that reminds us of how Moses had come as the prophet of God. And that spirit, that leadership had been passed on to Joshua. And we saw Moses doing lots of miracles. And then Joshua comes along and does many miracles. But after the ministry of Joshua, we don't read too much about miracles, things like, the earth opening up and the Red Sea being divided and the waters of the Jordan being separated and the sun standing still. But all those end after the ministry of Joshua. And we read and look in Judges and Ruth and 1st and 2nd Samuel, and we don't see any of those until we have the coming of Elijah. And now that mantle has passed to Elisha, and the miracles are going to continue through the ministry of Elisha. But once we get past that, we'll see the death of Elisha, and then the miracles are largely going to cease. And we'll read the rest of 2 Kings. Not too many miracles. I won't say none, but they will be in abeyance. And throughout the rest of the Old Testament and on into that period that we sometimes call the silent years after the close of the Old Testament, we'll see very few, if any, miracles until we come to Jesus and his apostles. And this brings up the question, who has the Spirit and power of Jesus today? You see, we're not seeing a lot of those sign gifts, feeding of the 5,000, the raising of the dead. I'm not saying you don't see any, but you don't see too much in the way of those sorts of things today. And yet God's Spirit and his power continue multiplied today, because it's not just where it's been passed to one person, but it has been passed to the entire church. We have the Spirit and power of Jesus today as we trust in him and as his Spirit works through us. And so verse 16, that is these 50 prophets, they said to Elisha, "Behold, now there are with your servants 50 strong men. Please let them go and search for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has taken him up and cast him on some mountain or into some valley. We need to go find him, do a rescue, an intervention." And he said, No, you shall not send. But when they urged him until he was ashamed, they put some pressure on him. He said, "Well, go ahead, send." And they sent therefore 50 men, and they searched 3 days, but did not find him. Now, notice that 3 days. And they returned to him while he was staying at Jericho, and he said to them, "Did I not say to you, don't go?" They searched 3 days and did not find him because he wasn't there. He had been taken to heaven. And that reminds us of the one who was in the grave. He was in the grave for 3 days, and they did not find him. And then he rose from the dead and was seen, and now has ascended into heaven. Don't go looking for his body. He's not there. Remember what the angels say. He is not here. He's risen from the dead. Don't go looking for natural explanations. What took place was from God. He has risen and ascended, and now he sits. Can I say it this way? He sits on the very chariot of God. He sits at the right hand of the Almighty. And one day, he's coming back again.